So after my experience with Big Four, it was about 2 years that I worked there, and it was a mutual decision. They quote unquote laid me off, but they also gave me a decision. Do you want to transfer to another group? And I just thought to myself, I made the wrong decision. I don't think that accounting is right for me. And if anyone else is wondering whether accounting is a right career for them, I urge you not to make the same mistake that I made, because I was convinced from this one bad experience of this very small segment of finance and accounting that I had chosen the wrong major, and all the schooling that I went through was a mistake. So I then went to start my own company. We were called Skill Silo. I ran that company with two of my very close friends as co-founders. It was an amazing experience where I learned so much, but unfortunately, as a first-time entrepreneur, there were, again, so many mistakes that I made, which ultimately caused us to crumble. So here I was, 4 or 5 years now out of school, 2 failed experiences, not knowing what exactly I was going to do. What I didn't realize was that I had 2 halves of my career, and when I would combine those 2, that is when I would get the opportunity to do what I'm now doing with our accounting firm, Mighty Digits. And that's given me the opportunity to work with some incredible CEOs, ones who have raised tons and tons of capital, ones who I've learned so much from. I've also gotten the opportunity to work with other finance and accounting professionals through the career, and it's been a very eye-opening experience. So I look forward to sharing all of my learnings and starting my firm. I also, for those of you who are aware, have a SaaS tool called Model Wiz, where you can get access to beautiful finance and accounting templates with automations, and soon those automations will also connect to your QuickBooks Online account through Model Wiz. And lastly, how many of you most likely know me, I've shared content for the last 2.5 years to an audience now of over 500,000 people. And if you're on my email list, and if you've ever reached out to me, you know that I absolutely respond to each and every single email. And if we haven't connected, I would love to connect. It may take me a few days to get back to you, but I promise you'll hear back from me personally. So in today's session, I'm excited to introduce you to the full stack financial framework that I've dubbed after being in my career now for over 10 years, all the mistakes that I made in order to prevent you from making those same mistakes. And it really comes down to a mix of the soft skills that you need, which consists of networking and really making a name for yourself and developing your own personal network, getting the most out of your relationship with your manager, the one who is going to be ultimately responsible for your career growth. And then as you grow in your career, the other side of it, how you can be the best manager and cultivate the best relationship with your direct reports. But as I'm sure many of you are aware, the soft skills are not enough. At the same time, you also need the other side of the coin, and that is the hard skills. And those hard skills, my favorite track that I like to think of, how does one ultimately become a CFO, which in many ways is the ultimate destination for a lot of people joining in the career of finance and accounting. My thought is that it's really a combination of the skills that you develop as a controller, which may be different for what a controller does overseas. Here in the US, a lot of that is accounting related. And then a combination of what you can develop with a career in FP&A, financial modeling, forecasting, telling the future, fundraising, and board reporting. My personal favorite part of finance and accounting. And then finally, to me, my favorite tool to assist with both of those is Excel. And we're going to cover all of that in today's session. And I first want to start by bringing you all back, before actually we get into that, if you are thinking about a career in finance and accounting, this webinar is for you. If you have already entered a career in finance and accounting and you're still new, you're still figuring it out, is this right for me, is it not? What exactly is the path for me to take? This webinar is for you as well. But even if you've been working for a number of years, you're in the middle of your career and you're still hungry for that growth, well, I have some goodies in this webinar to introduce to you as well. And hey, even if you're a seasoned vet and you want to grow your team, or you really just want to understand a bunch of other aspects of finance and accounting, I look forward to sharing all of that with you in today's session. So, starting with when I joined the workforce. That was when everything began, and I began my career in finance and accounting. Now, like many of you may have experienced when you first graduated, this to me, I thought, was the roadmap that I would be on. I would start my career at a really great place, which is where I started in Big Four accounting. And I would slowly grow through the ranks. I would develop the experience and skill set that I needed. And eventually I would either become partner or I'd become a CFO or whatever as such. And my goal in school at first was really just one thing. And this was such a mistake that I made. And I want to make sure that for those of you who are still in school, you don't make this same mistake. I tried so hard. In fact, I graduated with close to a 4.0 average. And to me, I thought that that was all that I needed. I thought that as long as I go to the career fair, I'll be handing out my resume like candy. And it'll be so easy for me to find a job because who doesn't love someone with close to a 4.0 average? But in reality, this is what I received. Rejection after rejection. In fact, the first time that I went to my career fair, there were maybe about 15 places that I applied to. Only 2 of them gave me an interview. And those 2 people who gave me those interviews, one was through someone who I actually knew, who was on the recruiting process and was able to bring me in for an interview. And the second was someone who I had just a really great conversation with the night before via a networking event that I attended. So the first mistake that I made in my career was I assumed that all I needed was the technical skills, the hard skills. Nothing else was really important. Everything else would just fall into place. But in reality, the soft skills are so valuable in your career and are a necessary ingredient in order for you to grow. And I like to really think of the fact that the soft skills and the hard skills, the combination of both of these is what makes an incredible leader and what allows you to have an amazing career. So let's start this presentation with the soft skills. What are those soft skills and how do you develop them? And to me, it really starts with by far your most powerful weapon. And that is who is in your network. You know the saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know. Well, it's also who knows about you. And I like to think of my network as those consisting of those in my immediate network, those people who I'm regularly in touch with. Then there's my extended network. So maybe those are people who I went to school with. Maybe those are people who I used to work with. Maybe those are former clients, people who I'm not so much in touch with, but is important for me to actually keep that relationship warm. And then finally, there's my related network. So all the people who are in my network, they have their own network as well. And in many ways, you can tap into that related network. So I'm curious, how many people here maybe had the experience where you were applying to a bunch of jobs and nothing was working out, and then you finally connected with that one person who knew someone else, and that was the person who brought you into a job, and your entire career trajectory changed? That's exactly how it could work with your network. So in terms now of how exactly do you cultivate that network in 2025? Well, this is what I like to think about it. First, don't think that there are going to be any fast pass, that there are any simple tricks. If you just copy and paste something, blast a bunch of emails, you'll be able to develop your network as such. No, this takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. But there are tons of opportunities for you to be able to develop your network. First, there are a bunch of networking events. So you can be attending webinars, you can be attending meetups, you can be attending conferences. You're not the only person who wants to network. And a lot of these events have this purpose exactly designated just to help people expand their network. And then on top of that, reconnect with people in your extended network like I just spoke with. Did you go to school with someone? Do you have maybe a relative who works in finance and accounting or works in investment banking who you're trying to break into? Or did you have a person who you used to work with? All of these people are ones who you should be reaching out to, you should be following up, and you should try to keep them warm in your network as they could unlock some incredible opportunities for you, regardless of where you are in your career. And finally, for those people who aren't in your network, don't be afraid to reach out to them. Don't be afraid to reach out and ask for advice. I've had tons of people reach out to me asking for advice on what exact path they should take in their career and how they should get the most out of their career. And while I may not have been able to answer to each and every single LinkedIn message, there were a lot of people who I did record a voice note and shared with them my own thoughts for how they could grow in their career as such. So the general idea, I think this is a song that I don't remember the exact words. It is, ask for money, get advice. Ask for advice, get paid twice. People love providing advice. And if you don't shoot, you will never score. So don't be afraid to identify that person that can get you what you want in your career, could answer the questions, and reach out to them and see if they're open to sharing advice for you. This over here is one of the most powerful things that you can do. Again, going back to the concept that I shared earlier, there are no shortcuts to developing and cultivating your network, but this is one of the most powerful things that you can do. So if you go ahead and devote every single day 1 hour towards cultivating your network, I can promise you, you will see some incredible things in your career. What I like to do is I like to set the golden hour, let's say between 10 and 11 a.m. each morning, before I have any client meetings, before I have to do any work, and I go out and think of who have I not connected with? Who would be a great person to reconnect with? And spend that hour without any distractions and reconnect with those people. You'll see in just a few months' time already some amazing opportunities come into your play. Whether you're looking for a new job, whether you're trying to find new clients, or really just learn how to get the most out of your career. All right, so that was all the information in terms of how to cultivate your network. But in order to really develop your soft skills, there's a lot more to it. And when you first join an organization or where you're young in your career, really at any point in your career, you're going to be a direct report to someone. And you'll need to do a great job in order to continue to take on more and more responsibility and grow in your career. So how exactly do you do that? And this is a mistake that I made when I first joined the Big Four. I didn't really understand this framework that I needed to follow. And because of that, again, it was a mutual decision. I wasn't really enjoying it. They weren't really enjoying my company. But I don't want you to make that same mistake. So here's my advice to you. First and foremost, don't assume that people are just going to give you the feedback that you need. Ideally, you should have a relationship with your manager where you can regularly get this alignment and understand how well are you performing. Don't just assume that if you don't hear anything, that means good. Not all managers are equipped with giving you the right feedback, which is what we'll talk about shortly on the other side of how to become a great manager. But on top of that, set regular touch points with your manager. If you don't have a weekly touch point, a monthly touch point, or quarterly touch point, make sure that you get that on the calendar because you have to solicit that advice so that you can constantly be improving and understand what you need in order to get ahead. And finally, ask your manager, what can I do to make your job easier? In fact, that's the whole purpose of a manager and a direct report. A direct report is trying to make the manager's life a little bit easier, who makes his or her manager's life a little bit easier, and on and on. So ask that question. Just like if you're in school, you're going to ask the professor, what can I do in order to get the most out of this course? Do the same thing with your manager. Don't be afraid to ask that question. Now, this is a really big thing. When I first joined the workforce, people told me, anytime you have a question, just ask anything that you need. I'm here. I'll give you any advice that you need. And I started doing that, and I then got a pushback from someone who I was reporting to where he said, hey, did you look into this yourself? Did you do any research? You just pinged me about 5 minutes ago on another question, and I don't think you researched that either. And I realized that when people say, ask me if you have any questions, if you get stuck, what they really mean is try to work through it on your own. And this to me is one of the most valuable skills you can develop as a person, the ability to really have critical thinking, whether that's Googling, searching for a YouTube video, or in today's day and age, our ability to even ask ChatGPT or an AI chatbot. Try to find the answer yourself. If you feel that something should be taking you 5 minutes and it takes you 20 minutes instead, write down that question, get as far as you can in your task, and then bring a list of all the questions that you have directly to your manager. Similarly, when you submit back the report, remember your manager is you're trying to build that confidence with your manager where whatever work you do, they have a really easy job. They barely need to present. They barely need a review. They can just forward that work upstream and so forth. And what's one of the easiest ways to destroy that credibility? To submit information that was not double checked. Now, I made this mistake so many times in my career, and honestly, it's painful double checking your work because you spend a lot of time doing something, you want to be quick, you want to go ahead and get it off your plate and work on the next thing. But then when you submit your work, you could have 90% of it correct and 10% of it incorrect. And that 10%, even that 5% or 1%, if it's a careless mistake, it could easily destroy your credibility and all the other hard work that you did. So be sure to double check your work. Think who is going to receive this information? What are they going to double check before they submit it to their direct report? Make sure that you have that double checked. I almost always find an issue with my report before it's signed off. Then I make that change and I could sleep a lot better at night. Now, this is what I want you to think about anytime that you take a task or you work with your manager. Think about who exactly is their boss. How does this tie in to the bigger picture? See, there's you, who reports to your boss. And your boss, odds are, has a boss as well. And we can continue that cycle all the way till we get to the CEO. Now, you may be thinking, okay, great, so the CEO is the last stop. No, absolutely not. Who comes after the CEO? Clients and investors. And at each stage of this, each person wants to delegate the work that they don't want to be doing anymore, the things that they're familiar with, the things that are repetitive, and they want to make the next person happy. So your job is to think about that chain and make, ideally, each person throughout that chain happy with your work through all the things that we just spoke about. All right, now the last part of the soft skills. As you start growing in your career, this is a really exciting point where now you begin to manage others. But being a great manager is not just something that by default you can do. In reality, there's a science to being a great manager. And this is what I've developed throughout the years in me managing tons of people, whether that be employees or direct reports. Like we spoke about earlier, set those regular touch points. I had a really great dinner once with a friend of mine, and he was telling me that he joined a new job, and in his last job, he loved his manager, and in his new job, he just wasn't clicking. And I asked, like, what was it different? What did this first manager do that was so different from this manager? And he said, you know, it was really simple. When I would meet with my manager, the first question that he would ask me is, how can I be of best resource to you? See, as a manager, your job is to build trust with your employees, with your direct reports. You want to get them to perform at the highest possible caliber. And because of that, they need to be given really clear instructions. They need to be given the resources that they need to succeed. They need to feel comfortable with you. They need to feel like you ultimately are in charge of their career and you have their best interest in mind. So start your conversations, meet regularly with your direct reports and ask, what can I do in order to be of great service? Don't look at it the other way around. Don't say, where's my work? Why haven't you completed this? Look at it as the opposite. Similarly, when someone does something great, go ahead and post that publicly. Let the entire company know this person did an amazing job. This is what we reward in this company. But a great manager doesn't just provide praise. A great manager also provides the background for what the employee needs to do in order to improve. You need to constantly be providing that constructive criticism. And the way that you do that is in private. Attack the problem and don't attack the person. And lastly, if all you do is talk about work, well, when it then comes time to share feedback, the employee most likely is going to feel a little bit uncomfortable and they'll be down on themselves. But when you really get to know them on a personal level, you develop this trust with the person. And when you give that feedback, then the person feels like this person really does have my best interest in mind. And they see it as a constructive exercise rather than something that's just going to feel them morally degraded. Like we spoke about, you need to also be providing the feedback on what is holding them back. Don't just provide the positive feedback. It needs to be a combination of both. Awesome. So I wanted to ask now in the chat, what other skills do you feel that I missed in terms of the soft skills? The soft skills being such an important part of your career. Does anyone have any other advice? See a bunch of people sharing their LinkedIn. Claudio says advocacy. Cool. Thanks for sharing that, Claudio. Does anyone else have any advice on what you can do to be a great direct report, get the most out of your network, and also be a great manager? Self-learning, active listening. Oh man, these are all amazing. Awesome. Reading the room, building confidence. That's right. All of these things are really great. Okay, well, we just spoke about the soft skills, but you can be the greatest, the best direct report. People can really love you. You can have this incredible network. But if you don't know your skills, you won't ultimately be able to grow. What you need is also the hard skills. And that's why I'm really excited to share with you my framework of what I think is the most important thing, the most important topics that you need in order to grow in your career in finance and accounting. And with that, we are going to start with the world of finance and accounting. See, finance and accounting is an incredibly broad field. And once again, if you're thinking of a career in finance and accounting, there is so much opportunity for you. There is corporate finance at the very top of our globe over here. There's a career in tax. There's a career in accounting, a career in audit or treasury or FP&A. There's so much that you can do with a finance and accounting career. We're going to touch base now on the two tracks that are my favorite, the controller track and the FP&A track. starting with the controller track. So when I think about what exactly a controller does, again, all of this can differ depending on where exactly you are around the globe. But generally, at least in the US, a controller's track consists of financial statement production, making sure that the financial statements are getting produced. A controller also manages all finance and accounting operations. And these can be incredibly sensitive tasks. The wrong payment to the wrong person can be catastrophic. A missed paycheck can be catastrophic. All of these things are very, very sensitive. A lot of responsibility that a controller holds. At the same time, there are also compliance issues that controllers need to manage. Those are tax filings and making sure that each and every single tax is filed by the specific date and filed correctly. Now, a controller may not be the one actually managing those taxes, but instead a controller can liaison with the tax firm or the tax professional who's preparing it, just like a controller can do with the auditing as well, coordinating the audit details and making sure all the information is ready so the company can have a smooth audit. So let's talk about this first piece over here, and that is producing financial statements. And that starts with an ability to first import in your transactions. And I see a lot of people always make this mistake. They go directly to their bank each and every single day. They find the transactions that posted that day. They copy that information and they paste it into their accounting system, which is incredibly manual. The majority of accounting systems these days allow you to directly connect to your bank, your credit card, any other portals, and source that information directly into your accounting system. And once you have that information in the accounting system, it's time to then classify those transactions. Now, I'm a really big fan when it comes to classifying transactions and doing it in batch. So I'll sort on description. If I see a bunch of expenses with the same description, I could go ahead and classify them not only to the same GL account, but now you're also classifying by the vendor or the customer. You're also classifying by the department or the job code. And you may also want to upload specific receipts or any other bill or invoice as it relates directly to that transaction. And as you source all of your information, classify all of your transactions, now it's time to do a bank rec. To me, the most important part of a month-end close, because if you're not confirming the bank balance and that it reconciles, it matches to the actual source on your bank statement, on your credit card statement, well, then there could be fraud and nothing really can be trusted. So performing a bank rec is a super important thing. And if you haven't done a bank rec before, it's part of your training. Get those reps in, do hundreds and hundreds of bank recs where you tick and tie each and every single number. Every controller should have gone down that path in order to be able to lead others and eventually getting that off your plate. But once we perform all the information with the bank reconciliations, it's then time to reconcile the balance sheet. And this to me is the most challenging part of a month-end close, because you need to take each and every single balance sheet account and you need to understand what was the balance at the beginning of the period, which is really equal to last period's ending balance. What were the amounts that caused this account to go up? And then how do we amortize that account? And for the most part, these accounts all behave similarly. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen on this over here. I have a template that makes this all really easy, where you could analyze all of the common balances on your balance sheet that you need to reconcile. And this is what will show you all of the balances as such, the balance as of the period that you're reconciling. And then, for example, we can see that we have a account for $2,400 that hit our balance sheet. And then this over here is what allows us to amortize that amount over each and every single period. I like to do that on a daily basis, and it all then sums up to the bottom over here. So I think I saw some people in the comments mention that they were having trouble getting the lead magnets. We're going to provide that right afterwards. If you can't, I don't think Google Meets makes it really easy to pin an actual comment, but if anyone is having difficulty accessing the resources from today's session, Octavian, you can go ahead and repost that. Thanks for everyone's patience on that. So after you reconcile the balance sheet, well, for the most part, you just need to do a basic check and make sure that your financial statements are good to go. But producing financial statements is really just one part of the controller track. You also need to manage your actual operations. And like we spoke about earlier, accounts payable is a really big piece that a controller manages. And it's important that you set up the relevant SOPs so that people on your team know exactly what to do when an email is created, when an email is received, a bill is received, How does that get into your accounting system? I'm a really big fan of these platforms over here. They make bill pay really easy, they make it efficient, and they make it really easy to reduce any errors in producing, and you collect the right approvals. So as you onboard your vendors and you classify those bills and you set it up for approval, I like to then process AP generally once a week, depending on the company size. It could be maybe every other week or even once a month. And just like we have accounts payable, we also have, oops, let's try that again. We have invoicing, the other side of it. So if accounts payable is what you owe to vendors, invoicing is what customers owe to you. And to them, you're a vendor. So to me, this is also a really sensitive piece, because if you're not sending out the invoices timely, then you're not going to get paid. You're going to have working capital issues. And if you're not following up with balances with customers, well, you'll again have those working capital issues. So what I like to do is I like to get copied. I'll create a group email address, like let's say, invoicing@yourcfoguy.com. And I'll subscribe all the members of my team to that. And then whenever a contract gets signed, I'll get that notification. I'll read the contract. I'll see when exactly do I need to send out that invoice. And I'll make sure that it's either set up automatically to go out at a specific cadence, or we're dropping everything, we're sending out that invoice so we can get paid quickly. And speaking of getting paid quickly, my favorite way to get paid quickly is to collect on auto debit. There are a lot of really great platforms. We use Pluto. We're a really big fan of that platform, where we can collect the money directly from our clients without having to wait on them to collect as such. All right, I see a few people putting the questions. We're going to get to all the questions at the end, so keep them coming. My colleague Octavian is going to round up all of these questions, and we'll go over at the end. So please do keep them coming. But we have one more area to accounting operations, and that is payroll. So payroll, like we said, is a really sensitive task, because if you're not processing people's paychecks, well, at the same time, then they're going to be really unhappy, and you may have issues with their ability to then meet rent, and you may have issues with them and their health benefits, which can account for their family. Even the smallest mistake with payroll can be entirely catastrophic. So once again, creating a standard operating procedure, creating these checks and balances to make sure that payroll is properly processed is really important to minimize these mistakes and errors. Similarly, I like to also set up an auto process as like a fail switch. I still like to review what happens before I process that payroll, but I like to make sure that if I make that mistake, it could still go out on time as such. Now, tax is another area. Although I'm a tax refugee and I'm not a really big fan of tax, you do need to stay compliant. So I usually work with tax professionals. And there are a bunch of different taxes that you need to file in your business, whether that's the corporate tax, the sales tax, or payroll taxes, and all these different ones. My favorite thing to get in compliance is to create a tax calendar. So I understand throughout the year, when do I need my 1099s, which by the way is coming up in a few days if you haven't started working on those. Similarly, I need to understand when is going to be my franchise tax, my Delaware franchise tax that I owe. When is my corporate income tax and state income tax and personal tax return? All of this information you don't want to risk being non-compliant with. In fact, even if you have no people managing your bookkeeping or anything else, your taxes is like a level 0 thing that you absolutely need to do. Every business needs to manage their tax filings accordingly. And then, of course, there's the auditing over here. So auditing is not something that I'm really a big fan of. It was probably my least favorite section on the CPA exam, but it's important. And the bigger a company gets, the more likely that their investors are going to want an audit, especially if you go public, which would be a holy grail for a lot of companies. So I'll let you just research that infographic afterwards. And I also want to hear from you now. What else does a controller do? So if anyone wants to post in the chat, what else as such? Thank you, Alyssa. I appreciate this. We're going to get to your questions as well. Anyone else want, what else they see in their job if they are a controller or what they've seen? That's right, training his or her team, just like we spoke about earlier. The soft skills is such an important job of a controller, not just the hard skills. So deal with audits, that's right. Credit control, that's another really good one. Liquidity management as well, managing projects also. Okay, and now we're going to get to my favorite piece of finance and accounting, and that is the FP&A track. And to me, a lot of people ask, what exactly is FP&A? How do you break into FP&A? And it really comes down to what a controller would do, again, in the US, is understand the past, the history, where the company has been. Whereas FP&A controls the future. And this to me is why this is such a valuable area of your career, because the future is a mystery and everyone is just trying to understand what the future is going to look like. So my roadmap in becoming a great FP&A professional is first understanding how to build a 3-statement model. And as part of the resources we have over here, this is a 3-statement model where you can easily change all the information as such, and your balance sheet will then update, and your cash flows would then update. So this to me is why I love first learning the controller and accounting side of things, because it solidifies your understanding of how these financial statements get produced, which then allow you to present a 3-statement model with all these different changes and assumptions that you can present to the CEO or the board of directors. But a 3-statement model includes a revenue build. And this to me is probably one of the most challenging part of a financial model, because every business has a different business model, a different way in which they acquire customers. And the general idea is that you want to focus on the inputs driving the outputs. So generally, how exactly do you close new customers? How long do those customers stay with you? What is the average sales price? That all translates into how you could forecast revenue and generate those sales. And then, of course, we have the most important expense in a business, headcount. So your ability to ultimately forecast out what the expense is going to be, starting with your existing hires over here. These are the fields that I like to pull in. I have the start date, the department, the salary, the type, and all of that other information as such. Then I like to enter in my projections, and it's really just a matter of calculating my gross salary. Now, I like to not only calculate gross salary as dividing the salary by 12, but remember, if someone starts in the beginning of the month or in the middle of the month and they're terminated in the middle of the month, well, you need to be able to project the differences and prorate their salary as such. But it's not just enough to factor in their salaries. You also have payroll tax for employees and health benefits and payroll admin fees. And all of those things should ultimately be aggregated. And if you're thinking for the next maybe 24 months and it's too difficult to always project that information, you could always do it on a simple method where you take the average cost by department and you just enter in how many people will be on your team, and you then get to your projection. When it comes time to projecting then the P&L, there are a number of different ways. Generally, I like to look at each and every single general ledger account and ask myself, which item over here do I need to use? What makes the most sense? And again, the more understanding that you have of accounting, the better you could forecast the future, because you understand the true nature of each and every single account. And finally, now comes the most challenging aspect. I know I said revenue was the most challenging, but this at least has a consistent structure, but it can be very difficult to actually learn because the balance sheet differs from the profit and loss in that it is all cumulative. So like we spoke about earlier, you need to follow the base formula. You need to understand, what was my beginning balance? If we take accounts receivable, my beginning balance is my ending balance from last year, from last period. Then I need to add in the amounts that I invoiced to customers over here. Then I need to subtract out the amounts that I'm projecting that I'm going to collect from customers. And that then gets me to my ending balance. And I'm generally a fan of doing that via a waterfall, as you see over here. So this is a waterfall for revenue, where you can amortize the booking for 90,000 and it instantly calculates a third of that. And if I change that to a 6, all the information will update as such. All right. When you're done with all the information, my favorite part, and this is why I built Model Wiz to give you access to these templates, is to present these beautiful dashboards. Whether you're comparing the current period to the prior period, or whether you're comparing my favorite report, the budget versus actuals, where you could have a story for each and every single line item, probably the most popular report at a board meeting. And then, of course, summarizing the 3 popular financial statements: the profit and loss, the balance sheet, and the cash flows. This is the biggest thing in terms of the hard skills that I want people to walk away with. Don't just focus on the accounting side of things. Don't just focus on the FP&A side of things. Become a full stack finance and accounting professional. It'll be the greatest investment that you make in your hard skills. All right, so if anyone wants to post the biggest challenges that they have in building a successful career in FP&A, we'll answer those questions at the end. And we're going to go a little bit fast through this last section in Excel. Once again, my favorite tool, something that I've spent maybe thousands and thousands of hours in as I've become a Microsoft MVP. I've produced courses with LinkedIn Learning, as well as my private courses. And some of you may have even found me from my YouTube videos, which I'm really excited to continue producing a lot more of. My first advice for anyone here who wants to get really good at Excel is just poke through the ribbon. Take a look at the file ribbon, the home ribbon. Understand what each and every single one of these buttons do. Each and every single one of these buttons is another feature. Now, I have a course on this that you're more than welcome to take, but you don't even need a course. Just go to your Excel file, click each of these buttons, and see what exactly you can do in each of these areas. Just an understanding of what Excel is capable of will add tremendous value to your career. Now, to me, the roadmap for getting really good at Excel doesn't just stop with getting familiar with everything, but it's also an aspect of you learning the most important functions. So to me, a sum ifs is really important for mapping information and aggregating it based off of a specific mapping. I like index match and XLOOKUP for a lookup functions. And then of course, the filter function is really powerful as a spill function. We also have EO month. One of the resources that I have over here is 18 Excel functions that you can follow as such, each of them. And there's also a YouTube video that you guys can all follow in order to become a functions master. Because once you have your functions mastered, you could start to understand data and the difference between structured data, which is really easy to manipulate, and unstructured data, which is a lot easier to consume, but not so much to manipulate. Excel tables, as you start to learn more about structures, will unlock incredible benefits. It could automatically extend the range. It can create a uniform structure and so many more other benefits, which will then allow you to work in Power Query. For those of you who don't know Power Query, that was one of the most recent videos I released on YouTube. I really do encourage you to research that because Power Query is literally like magic. Just ask anyone who's ever worked in Power Query. And then finally, the most complicated, complex, powerful thing that I think you can learn in Excel is Excel's data model. And for that reason, I spent a ton of time, weeks and weeks with my team, preparing the world's greatest pivot table, which you could also get via the lead magnets included below. And with that, I am super excited to announce the opening of my community, The Boardroom, where I am going to teach you each and every single one of these concepts that we just spoke about. We opened up our boardroom first just to accounting firm owners, which has been incredibly exciting. Octavian, you can go ahead and share a link whenever you would like. And from now for the next 48 hours, we are giving 50% off. This is going to be the only time right now that we have planned in which we are going to give such a steep discount. And the reason for that is because I want you in my community. I want you to follow this trajectory that I set. I want you to have the opportunity to learn from everyone else where they're struggling, getting real-time feedback from others and from myself, and to join incredible monthly workshops with us each and every single month, where we'll walk through each of the topics that we just spoke about. So like I spoke about, this is your opportunity to really cultivate your network, where you can build relationships with others. You could learn from other people going through your same struggles. You could learn from people who have already solved those struggles and how they solved it. Don't make the mistake of saying siloed in your career. Get real-time feedback from others. Develop that community. And similarly, this to me is the most valuable part. At many of these workshops, I would honestly charge just the price for this annual subscription. But every single month, we're going to have 90-minute workshops. And our next workshop is going to be this FP&A fundamentals over here. And then we're going to focus on revenue forecasting, P&L forecasting, and balance sheet forecasting. So over the next 4 months, I'm going to take you through, if you have no experience with FP&A, live with me, getting real-time feedback through fun and engaging exercises, how you can become an FP&A professional and build a really robust financial model. But those are not the only workshops that we're going to be doing. This is where I'm spending the bulk of my efforts this year. We're also going to go over all the controller side of things. How do you close the books effectively? How do you handle your accounting operations effectively? These are all things that I can't wait to handle live. And then on top of that, I'm also going to try to make you an Excel whiz. We'll go through each of the different areas of Excel functions, pivot tables and Power Pivot, Power Query and keyboard shortcuts. Super excited for these workshops each and every single month. And of course, you'll also get access to all of the recordings ahead of time, after each section. You'll be able to access premium content. So anytime that we do a new post, it'll be in our archive and you could ask questions on that content and you can get involved and get access directly to be the first to see all that information as it comes out. And like I spoke about, anytime that you post a question, I'm going to be in that community, and I'm going to make it a priority, at least for the next bunch of months, that I'm going to be the one there answering each and every single question. But as our community grows, it won't just be me. See, this is why I'm so excited about this opportunity. So far, all of my content, it's really just been one way. It's been me providing the information. And if you want to get in touch with me, you send me an email and then I'll respond. Now you have this huge web where you can develop your network and get this feedback from others in real time. We'll have monthly challenges. We just kicked off our very first ever book club, and we're going to be having other accountability pods and other challenges as well to make you accountable to be your absolute best. Now, for those of you who want to get even more, you could also join the Pro Plan in our community and get access to Model Wiz, where you'll unlock all of our finance and accounting templates, both the current ones and any that will develop into the future. And you could customize those templates specifically based off the dates, departments of your business, and save tons of time in Excel. Now, thanks, Octavian. Thanks for the note. That makes sense. Octavian just reminded me of one thing. Keep in mind, everyone on this webinar, this 50% discount is only to you. Everyone else is only getting 30%, and it's only for the next 48 hours. So I want to make sure that you're able to take advantage of it. But this Pro Plan that we spoke about also gives you the opportunity to get access to every single on-demand course. And I plan on producing a ton of additional on-demand courses that are going to be hours in length with really fun templates and engaging exercises that you can take at your own time. And then lastly, if you're a firm owner, I want you to join the 15+ firm owners that are currently in our community. This is going to be a segmented spot only for firm owners who can join, and you could ask questions about how to win clients, about how to hire employees, about how to really get the most out of your accounting firm and really build the firm of your dreams. I encourage each and every single one of you to think about what you can do to really add the most value in your career. Don't just do it alone. Build your career with us and let us all help you and win together. So with that being said, I am going to open the floor now to any questions on today's presentation or anything else. Octavian, I am going to make you the moderator to any questions that you saw that were posted. Why don't you just go ahead and ask those and we can begin.
Hello, everyone. So you can see me live from the chat. Excited to be here. So Josh, I thought that we'd have more questions. So everyone, if you have even more questions, you can ask them in the chat and we'll come back to them. So right now we had a very early question and I forgot to ask it, but someone asked, Josh, what do you think about EPM solutions like NFPlan, Pigment Board? Yeah, so I guess we can speak about that if you want to.
I think these solutions are great for enterprise companies who have maybe 200-300+ people on their team, and a solution strictly in Excel really isn't enough. I'm a really big fan, though. I can't speak of the ones that you just mentioned, but I'm a really big fan of solutions that don't try to replace Excel, but solutions that instead work in tandem with Excel. Because even if you want to build a model outside of Excel in their solution, I find that it's very difficult to get the full level of customization that you'll get in Excel. And then when it comes time to present that financial model to someone else, you either have to onboard them and get them familiar with how to use that platform, or they may just want to ingest the information and it's not really so easy to see the structure, and it kind of creates that closed loop. So for those solutions that are more enterprise level and have an Excel integration, I think they're great. They could also be fairly expensive. So it would depend on where exactly the company's at in their stage.
Thank you for the answer, George. So afterwards, we have a question from Jen. Jen asks, understanding the story the data is telling, what are some fundamental resources to help with developing FP&A skills?
So I think a really big piece is being able to work with non-financial accounting background, people without a finance and accounting background. So if you think about it, that's going to be when you work with department heads. Let's say you're creating a departmental budget, which generally when a company surpasses 50, 60 employees, instead of just one person or a department managing the model, now you have different departments. Being able to explain to these people what a profit and loss is, what a balance sheet is, who's on their team, being able to ingest that information and get into a financial model is very important. And then similarly, being able to present that information, whether that's at a board meeting, whether that's on investor calls for an upcoming fundraise, being able to just tell the story behind those numbers, that to me is also a really big piece. So I hope that answers the question. I believe it does, but if not, you could ask some more.
Yeah, thank you, Josh. So the next question. Someone asked, how do you start a career in finance and accounting if you have a current career in wealth management operations? Are there any courses to do in order to stand out? So yeah, I guess the general question about switching careers.
It's a good question. I'm going to attack that question as a whole with how do you break into a new career? And to me, there are really two ways that you can do that, maybe three ways that I would say. The first way, which is the most, I think is the most straightforward, is if you work in an organization that has a different department. So for instance, let's say you're trying to break into FP&A and you're working right now only in accounting. If you already proved yourself as an accounting professional, it's a lot easier to make a lateral move and then switch into FP&A. Generally, it involves you first doing a lot of extra work, managing your current tasks and taking on that extra work to be able to then prove yourself as an FP&A professional. So that would be my number one advice. If you already have that opportunity in your existing company, look for that. You know, the next idea could be you actually go back to schooling, because generally when you go for a first-time job, people want to see some sort of validation that you're going to be good. And yeah, there'll be a balance between how much they actually train you, but at the same time, they want to make sure that you can at least hit the ground running on some of the basic fundamentals. And it's generally difficult to prove that you have those fundamentals unless you have a degree in accounting, unless you have experience in accounting, maybe even a CPA license. I think as you get later on in your career, where you graduated from, even if you have a CPA, is not as important. It could add credibility, but it's not as vital. And then, you know, finally, probably my favorite way is, again, building up your personal network. Like, you could have no skills, you don't even have like a college or high school degree, but if you know the right person and that person trusts you and they're willing to vouch for you, you can get a job. So I would focus on any of those three opportunities, or ideally a combination of all three.
Thank you, Josh. So the next question comes from Ezekiel, and Ezekiel just got hired last October, so we are congratulating Ezekiel. But
Congrats.
Ezekiel is asking, is FP&A career a good foundation for private equity and VCs?
Great question. I think a big part of both private equity and VCs involves analyzing deals. And in order to properly analyze a deal, you need to understand what has the company been doing so far and what is the potential of this company. So because of that, it's very common in, let's say, like investment banking or really any of these fund management where they need to make an investment, that they're going to want to build this financial model. And a financial model can come in different shapes and sizes. It could be one that analyzes the valuation of a company or the feasibility for the purchase of a company or some sort of investment, or an operational model. So I think FP&A is an incredible opportunity for that. You also just need to be aware that, you know, you may be working more on the operational in-house side for a company, which could differ from an M&A opportunity with private equity and VC. But I definitely see it as a great relevant skill.
Thank you, Josh. Someone also previously asked about a very general question, client reporting thoughts. So I guess you can speak about the whole topic of client reporting, some quick tips.
So to me, one of my favorite ways to do client reporting is to present things at a macro level, like we showed earlier, where you summarize a profit and loss, balance sheet, and cash flows. And you can maybe provide the detail as an ancillary if they have any questions about things. I like to also present dashboards that show the significance of that information. So how did this balance compare to last period's balance? Or how did this balance compare to what we budgeted? Again, going back to the idea of presenting financial information to non-financial people, clients are a perfect example of that. So if you have the proper dashboards in place, especially with a robust financial model, that makes it a breeze.
Thank you, Josh. So we have another question. So I don't think we have the name right, but he or she is asking that he or she is telling us that he or she is an undergrad international student studying in Sydney, and she or he heard it's harder for international students to get a job in comparison to local students. So what advices do you have for him or her overall? Additionally, how important are the CA, ACCA, and CPA's exam?
Good question. So I think first, again, dividing up the hard skills versus the soft skills. I don't think you can really have one or the other. They're both super important, especially earlier in your career. Like I mentioned, you want to at least have their credentials. Those credentials are what's going to at least get you in the pool to be analyzed. When I later spoke to these recruiters and I'm like, hey, I had close to a 4.0 average. Why didn't I get accepted? And they told me, look, there were another 60, 70 people in your class who had a GPA above 3.5. So anyone below, I don't know if it was 3.5, 3.0, whatever they said, like anyone below that, maybe they weeded them out. But once you got to that point, the hard skills weren't really enough. So I would encourage you to really focus on getting your hard skills and the technical skills as high as possible, but the rest really comes to you networking. Like, you need to be reaching out to people at jobs, people who you're interested in potentially working for, people who are working in a similar career. If you could really devote an hour each and every single day, I can promise you that you will eventually find a job, and it'll most likely be through your efforts there. David, we're going to go through one more question, then we're going to handle a few other Q&A that we have over here about the community.
Makes sense. So the next question, let me pick a very good one. So let's go with this one. Someone asked about the trading that him or her you are advising for tax, so basically taking the training. He or she would like to understand more as a general knowledge for a controller position.
It's a great question. Honestly, I don't want to oversell my expertise and experience here. I don't really have too much of a tax background. I think eventually we'll have a workshop on that, and I'll most likely bring in a different tax professional. So I'm sorry I can't be more of help on that. If anyone else has any questions that we weren't able to get to, like I said, I promise that I will get the opportunity to respond to each and every single one. Send me an email. I can't promise on when exactly it will be, but I want to just clarify a few things that people may be wondering about with regards to the community. So first, what topics will we talk about at the workshop? So again, my goal is to be able to take you through these 3 tracks throughout the next 12 months. So we're first going to start with my favorite area, and that is FP&A, and that is where I generally get the most amount of questions. So we'll be covering financial modeling fundamentals in our next workshop, which is going to be in mid-February. And then we're going to be talking about revenue forecasting. After that, we'll be doing P&L forecasting and headcount forecasting. And then finally, we're going to do balance sheet forecasting. We don't have the exact agenda for anything after these 4. Thanks so much, Sharon. But after that, I then want to introduce the controller side of things. So I want to make sure that people feel like they have the knowledge and skill set right in front of them to become that full stack finance and accounting professional. So we're going to go over how to close the books, not only accurately, but also efficiently, and to manage your team in doing that. And then we'll also have a session just on the accounting operational side of things with invoicing, with payroll, and with accounts payable. After that, I'm going to be sharing everything I know about Excel. And it's really tough to wait for that long because I want to teach everything right away. But this is going to be a really exciting opportunity where we'll go over Excel functions, everything you can do in Excel with the neat tips and tricks. We'll be going over Power Query and the difference between structured data and unstructured data, and also Power Pivot. That is what the next 12 months or so is going to look like. We'll also learn how to prepare some beautiful, stunning CFO dashboards, which some of you may have already taken my course on, and some of you may also have through Model Wiz. So like I said, in these next 12 sessions, I mean, this alone, I think, is just an incredible bargain just to be able to join the community and get access to each and every single one of these. So I look forward to seeing you guys in those workshops. And if you can't attend those workshops, not to worry, we will have a replay afterwards, and we'll also eventually start doing a repeat of these workshops, but you could always watch the replay. All right, is it right for me if I'm just starting my career? I absolutely think so. We are going to do things assuming that you have no knowledge at all. I expect this community to have a really healthy balance between people who are just starting their career, people who are already in the middle of their career, and seasoned vets as well. My plan is to bring everyone together and have this be a one-stop shop. So if you're already seasoned as a finance professional, I could promise you I'm going to teach you some advanced things that you may not have known, whether that's related to FP&A, the controller side of things, or Excel. The difference between the pro plans and the basic plans. So the basic plan is going to give you access to the community and to the workshops and all the premium content. The pro plans gives you access to all of my on-demand courses. Right now I have 4 of them. There's one on Excel, one on Intro to Financial Statement Modeling, one on CFO dashboards, and one on Intro to Accounting. And we're going to be producing a bunch more courses this year. In addition to that, the Pro Plan will give you access to Model Wiz, where you'll get access to all of my finance and accounting templates via our Excel add-in, and you could customize all the information based off the dates, departments, and so forth. All right, all communities are just noise. Why is this one different? Well, this is a little bit difficult to explain, but I'm really putting my all into this community. See, as you guys know, I right now have a few things that I'm selling. Again, I have those 4 courses, and I used to sell templates at Your CFO Guy, but now we're doing that through our Excel add-in. This is really where I want to spend most of my day, concentrating all of my efforts and really just making this the best community possible. So like I said earlier, you'll not only get access to communicate and ask questions, which I'll be responding to personally, You'll also get the opportunity to connect with other people, unlocking opportunities ideally for you to find that next job or to learn what you need in order to nail that next job. You'll be able to join and attend these really fun workshops. You'll be able to get these on-demand classes. And I'm hoping that I could really encompass this full world of finance and accounting. I'm new to this community scene, and although we've had our community with our firm owners for the last 6 to 8 weeks, there's a lot to learn, and I'm very confident that with you getting in early with this 50% discount, you're gonna help us all be incredible community members and grow this community. So I'm really excited to see you there and to really take control of your career. What kind of access will you get from me? Well, like I mentioned, you'll get the opportunity. You can ping me anytime. I don't know exactly how quickly I could respond, but whenever you have questions, I'll be responding in those early stages. And then every single month for the foreseeable future, you'll also get to see me directly on the workshops. I can promise you that I'll be placing a priority with all communications with our community members versus everyone in our email. But for those of you who don't join the community, no worries. We can still stay in touch via email. You'll still get my daily newsletter to help you get the most out of your career. That's an option as well. My job over here, if you've read my slogan anywhere, it's always helping you get the most out of your career. And I'm so thrilled and honored that all of you have really come here and have been following my content and encouraged me to always get better and produce all this information, all really with one aim: sharing all the information that I know to help you level up your career, which in turn helps me level up my career. So thank you guys so much for coming. Once again, this is the link over here. I'll just leave this for a few more minutes. You can join at yourcfoguy.com/community. Like I spoke about earlier, this 50% discount, it's only for a limited time, and it's only the people who are on this workshop. So be sure to share that code in the checkout page in order to get that 50% discount. And I really look forward to seeing each and every single person there. I'm going to go ahead and now look in the comments if there are any additional questions. But thank you so much for everyone who joined. Oh, and a heads up, we're going to be doing so many more workshops. Workshops are going to be part of the community, webinars later this year on a lot of information like we spoke about earlier. And I'm really excited for all of that. So thank you guys so much for coming. I really had a blast, and I hope that you enjoyed this webinar. Thank you guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Glad that you enjoyed it, Regina. Thank you so much. You're welcome, Danny, Sven, Subhashini. I'm excited to see you there, Nathaniel.